We're not live.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Homeless Coordinating Council meeting. As always, we'll give an opportunity to find out who are the designees for whom today. So we always have a list so to make sure that the public and everyone knows who's representing who. So I'm Lawrence Rael. I'm sitting in as Mayor Keller's representative on the council. Any other designees? We'll go around the horn here. Chamisa.
Hi, Chamisa Pacheco de Alas, and I'm the designee for Dr. Michael Richards today. He hopes to be able to join us when State Board of Finance wraps up.
Okay, thanks. Welcome. Mr. Enrico.
Good morning. Enrico Grotti, Deputy County Manager of Community Services, Bernalillo County.
And you're saying you're as an observer today, right? Because I think we've got all our representatives from the county, right?
Yeah, I'll just fade into the background.
You're good. You're good. Are there any other designees sitting in for anybody else?
Oh, designees.
Okay. Well, very good. Welcome, everybody. Let me begin by indicating to all of you that we've set up a process per the conversations that we had last council meeting to ensure that we get public comments, etc. And the way the system is set up is that we will accept written comments, a lot like the way we do with the city council, and that we would accept written comments up until Monday afternoon of the night before the meeting. And then we would let folks sign up to speak to the council on the day of the meeting, and it would be on a first come first served basis, and they'd have to get onto the Zoom process, etc. And so right now we do not have any comments that I'm aware of. Who do we have? Okay. We have, but do we have any? We don't have any signed up for public comments, right? Okay. So there's no one signed up for public comment, but I do want to make sure that you all know. I know we had a lot of conversation about this, that we are letting people address the council before the meeting starts or during the meeting at the beginning of the meeting. And as of this point, we don't have anybody signed up for public comment. So we will continue that practice as we go through all our meetings and give the community members and the public an opportunity to express their concerns to us. So having said that, our first order of business is actually to look at the minutes from our last council meeting, and I know sent out if there are any corrections or amendments or any clarification on the minutes that you'd like to see on the minutes. If not, that we would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Let me move on then to, I know that Carol was going to talk a little bit about the op-ed piece. And so, Carol.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for the comments back and forth about the op-ed. And again, just want to thank our county partners for initiating this, and Councilor Pyskoty for suggesting it. And then we worked closely with UNM and the county and the city. And then, so this was submitted yesterday, and the signatories were all the elected officials, the mayor and all the elected officials from the Homeless Coordinating Council, along with President Stokes. So it was submitted to the Journal yesterday. So let's be hopeful this will get published soon. I know there's a variety, they're getting a lot over there at the Journal, and so I stand for any questions if there are any.
Okay. Seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our discussions and our committee reports updates. And so let's go to our housing co-chairs. Lisa, you and your co-chairs would give us an update on your work to this point.
Sure thing. And I know Betty Valdez has joined us, so I'll give Deb a moment to let her into the meeting. And then I'm not sure if Mark Childs is also with us today, but I'll just give you guys a second to let them into the meeting.
Betty said that Mark, I do not see Mark.
Oh, I see Betty. Is Mark, and Mark doesn't look like he's on.
No, he is not attending today.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we had our first housing committee meeting last Wednesday, the 9th. It was a really great meeting. Really, all of our, I think everyone who's part of that committee was able to be part of this first meeting, which was really helpful. And we're really at an advantage in the housing committee because we have this excellent analysis that was done by the Urban Institute that identifies major needs and gaps. Hold on one second. That identifies major needs and gaps of affordable rental housing for low-income folks, as well as a set of recommended strategies that would have the highest impact. So our conversation really focused around those high-impact strategies and beginning to prioritize which of those I mean, they're all important and we really need to do all of them in order to have the impact that we want to have, but we also know that we need to prioritize and focus. So the conversation largely centered around how do we begin to prioritize these, where do we start, and really recognizing that some of those high impact strategies could be implemented much quicker than others. We'd really see the impact much quicker than others, so sorting them out by time frame might make sense. So I am currently drafting a document that we'll be looking at our meeting next week that begins to lay out those high impact strategies, and we'll begin to flesh them out. And then I think my hope is maybe we can share that draft with the full Homeless Coordinating Council at the following meeting on the 29th before we finalize it within the committee to get some feedback and input. And then I will stop there and see if Betty would like to add anything. All right, are there any questions? Sorry, Lauren.
Lisa, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm sorry, and I apologize. I live at 12th and Manal, and there's a lot of construction. So I'm dialing in. My Xfinity is on the blink this morning. So no, I echo what Lisa said. It was a great meeting. I think everybody participated, and I think a lot of good information and good input is going to come from this group. And Lisa, you did a great job leading us and keeping us on track. So thank you for that. And that's really all I have to say.
Thanks, Betty. Thank you very much, Lisa. Any thoughts, comments from the board members? Okay. One more thing, Lisa, what are the next steps for you all as it relates to moving forward as you see them?
What are the next steps? I'm sorry, this part of the question. What are the next steps for us for moving forward? So we are currently working on this concise document that really outlines needs and gaps, which fortunately we're able to really just pull from the Urban Institute report, and then high impact strategies. And also, again, we are pulling those from the Urban Institute report, but we need to organize them in a way that gives us a clear roadmap forward, because as listed in the Urban Institute report, it's just kind of a list of strategies. So I'm working on this draft. We'll be looking at it at our next meeting, which is next Wednesday. And then I think at that point, we can bring that draft to the Homeless Coordinating Council meeting on the 29th for input and feedback before we finalize it. But ultimately, we're working towards this, short, concise document that lays out needs and gaps and high impact strategies.
Okay, that's great. That's perfect, because we want to make sure that we're getting these things to the in front of the council. And let me just ask you the last question, because I know it was a topic of conversation at our last regular meeting. Are you getting a lot of public, i.e. participation from the community at any of your meetings? And Are you all doing some outreach to do that in your particular area?
We, at our first meeting, we had 2 members of the public participate via the public link. You know, it's all posted online on the city's website on the Homeless Coordinating Council landing page. We have not done any special outreach to members of the public regarding the committee.
Okay. Well, we'll be asking that question of all the committee members. You just happen to be the first one, just to make sure that we're doing our very best to ensure that the community is involved. So thank you very much. Members of the council, anybody have any questions for Lisa or Betty on their report? Okay, if not, let's go to the Homeless Service System co-chairs, and Quinn and Commissioner Pyskoty and Rodney McNease.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday morning. We've made it again. Just let's see. I see Commissioner Pyskoty. Is Rodney on?
Yeah, Rodney, he's unable to speak.
Okay.
He is able.
He is able to speak? Okay, great. So I wanted to start out and say that Deb has sent out to all of the HCC members an infographic for you all today. Basically what this is a synthesis of our core documents involving medical respite.
Can you share the screen?
What I've done is sort of synthesize the ideas, the main points, so that we could have them easily consumed. The reason for this is we had our first meeting. It was great. Commissioner Pyskoty did a fantastic job of really being a community steward and having all of the folks really highlight what they thought they could bring to the table, what was needed, etc. And also part of that was setting the stage for what work has been done. And one of the things that we have really been working on is the high impact strategy of more medical respite beds here in Albuquerque. So the idea of medical respite is for folks, you know, that are not sick enough to go to the hospital, not quite sick enough to be in assisted living. So the idea is that they would come and be in medical respite, and then they'd heal, they'd get through whatever thing they were getting through was, and then they'd be brought into permanent housing, which is our goal. The idea is not to have folks go back to shelter or back to the street after they are healing. So that is a big part of this. And so you all kind of know a little bit about the context of Albuquerque. We only have 37 medical respite beds here in town right now. And those are shared between the Barrett Foundation and also the Albuquerque Opportunity Center. And those beds are also embedded within a shelter setting, which, you know, is a complicated level of its own. So what we're proposing here as a high impact strategy is to have 25 respite beds that are apart from a general shelter population, so that it gives just that one extra level of safety and recovery to recuperate. Also, in addition, we know that the community needs more shelter beds. So we are also talking about 75 shelter beds in addition to the 25 respite beds, but not in the same setting. So the respite would be separate and the shelter would be separate, but both would be meeting a community need. There's more specific information on the infographic. There's some data points and there's some definitions and objectives regarding medical respite. I don't need to read all of that for you because you are all highly capable individuals that can look into that. And if there are any more, you know, if there are any questions specifically about that, we can be connected outside of this meeting in the interest of time. So that's what I wanted to say, and I'm hoping that Commissioner Pyskoty and Rodney McNease would also like to add anything.
Rodney has to get off. There's a small microwave fire at UPC, so he has to evacuate the building.
Okay.
So he'll be able to chime in.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
And thank you, Quinn. Thank you. Yeah, Quinn, thank you for kind of summarizing our meeting and talking about medical respite. I was really struck by the participation. I don't recall, I think we had close to 20 participants from neighborhood associations and service providers, and their thoughtfulness, their knowledge, their experience was amazing. I really enjoyed it. And I think the one thing that kept popping up as a theme in our discussion was as Quinn mentioned, the continuum of care, and that nobody wants to see a revolving door of homelessness, that we want to make sure that people have the right services that lead them into a more stable lifestyle with permanent housing. So yeah, I thought it was great, a great first meeting. I'm looking forward to more and how we can integrate this into the whole of the HCC. So thank you.
Okay, anything else?
I think Rodney is back online, just in case if you wanted to add anything.
Rodney, are you back by chance? Nope. Okay, well, Rodney, you can join and comment as you see, as you get a moment, realizing you got a little challenge in front of you.
And then Lawrence, just one more thing. I just wanted to throw in about our next meeting, which is a week from today, that we will be really honing in on our second form of community needs and strategies. So we definitely have the medical respite, kind of we're honing in there, and now we're looking to figure out what is the next thing we want to do. So.
Right, which was going to be my next question is for you and the commissioner and the folks on this committee, where do you see the next steps and making sure we get something in front of the group?
Absolutely.
All right, let me ask the council, anyone have any questions on this information or where we are at this point with this program? Okay, let me just say, ask one question. On the number of respite beds, maybe both you and Carol can talk about this. Do we see this being the number of beds that we need for the entire city? Or do we just see this being a beginning point?
It's a great question. This is a beginning point. Really what we need is about double that. We probably do need 50. So, you know, there's a lot of opportunity, but this is a great place to start, especially if we're thinking about in terms of, you know, a pandemic, starting small and having space so that we don't have to, if something were to happen again, we wouldn't have to reinvent everything. So I think, yes, this is definitely a place to start. To keep the idea of a small facility rather than the original idea of a giant facility. This is you know, responding to the community conversation of smaller, more focused facilities that will help the folks on the street. Carol.
All right, Carol.
And I do want to add and appreciate the framing as we're moving toward identifying gaps and high impact strategies. The gap is that we only have 37 medical respite beds in our community as Quinn identified, and they're spread around in different shelter settings across our community. And those are funded and financed through different MCOs or the university, which is great because they know there's this need, but it's only a piece of the need. So I think we have an opportunity as we move forward to look at that. I think some partnership with our healthcare institutions will be of paramount importance. So it's just a really stark gap in our community, and I just want to highlight that of the core documents that I know all of you, we're just proud of all these core documents that UNM, the county, and the city are providing. There is a wonderful core document citing the need for medical respite, this needs assessment that was done, and I think that was 2014. So that is available to all if you want to dig in a little deeper. Thanks.
Councilor Benton.
Just had a question about how medical respite is defined. I mean, is that, I mean, maybe it's self-evident, but I just wanted to be sure, as opposed to, I mean, we have emergency overnight beds, there's that whole thing, right? And then for what, a variety of reasons, and then medical respite, I'm assuming is somebody that needs immediate overnight medical services available?
Well, so not necessarily. So the definition for us, for the purposes of this, is that medical respite care is acute and post-acute medical care for patients experiencing homelessness who are too ill or frail to recover from a physical illness or injury while living in a shelter or on the streets, but who are not sick enough to be in the hospital. So it could be that they have to stay pre-op for a colonoscopy and they need a place to, you know, take their enema and be safe. Or there's another set of folks that are being treated in the hospital for something like, say, an abscess, which is common on the street, and they do need to heal and have follow-up wound care. This would also be a facility for that. So there's kind of a lot of different types of things that people could be recovering from, but the main point is that they are experiencing homelessness, and they're not going to really get any better if they're out on the street.
I can provide a small story, an important story. And this was last December at our West Side shelter, and through our partnerships, all of the people on the screen, we have our clinic there. And one evening I was out there, a woman said, yes, please come into the exam room. And so this was a woman experiencing homelessness, had severe frostbite on her legs from laying on the sidewalk. So she'd been treated, I'm pretty sure UNM, and was on the road to recovery. But because she was out on the streets and could not elevate her legs, the situation was getting worse, which was going to cause a readmission or infection, or honestly, the worst case is amputation. So if a medical respite was available, she would be able to get those bandages changed routinely and to keep her legs elevated, but absolutely didn't need to be in the hospital. But it was going to head that way if we didn't take care of it.
Okay, thank you. And again, what's the current guesstimate as to how many are needed?
The guesstimate is about 50, but with COVID, we might at this time be able to infer more.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions on this issue?
I do.
Go ahead, Julie.
Thanks, Lawrence. I just was kind of wondering, so you guys probably know that medical respite is really expensive, and I don't think, and Margarita probably knows this better than I do, I don't know that it's, you get much reimbursement for it. So we just need to keep that in mind, although I agree wholeheartedly that it's necessary, but we have to kind of remember, right, Quinn, I think it's pretty expensive.
I think what we're finding too, because we've been meeting with Healthcare for the Homeless to have some of these conversations, because they're part of a national network that's involved in a lot of these studies. And so the federally qualified health centers, their reimbursement rate is, I mean, I don't know the word, but it seems pretty good in terms of reimbursement rates. So it seems workable with this number of beds. That's where I'm at right now. Go ahead, Carol.
And if I could add, I think we could send this out more broadly, but there is a webinar today at 10 a.m. that Quinn's sending out to her co-chairs with the National Association for Homelessness on Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement for medical respite. And we're getting that recorded as well, so that could be shared broadly. Another resource.
Any other question? Let me ask one that I think is important. So this is about homeless service system. So Quinn, so am I to understand, and Carol, that, I mean, this is one of the many other services that we're gonna need in our shelter or in the system of care for folks without homes. At the next HCC meeting, will we see more of the other services that you all believe are part of that?
Yes, so the goal would be for our next meeting to work with my co-chairs and also with the rest of the folks that are on the committee to find out what are the services that we feel are needed for these populations. So hopefully we'll be able to get a list out that we can start refining.
Okay. I think that's really super important as it relates to all the other committees, and particularly the facilities committee, and is getting an understanding of all the services and the types of services that are going to be required as it relates to siting a facilities, because all of this will drive the size and the structure of and how we set up these facilities to help provide these services. I think it was important to talk about this one in particular because this one, in my opinion, is one of those services that sort of, as I think Julie alluded to a bit, and that is that it's sort of in that middle of almost medical, but not quite there because it's mostly respite, but it does present a real concern because of the acute nature of the situations that these homeless folks find themselves in with needing really just to be resting and taking care of themselves, or we're going to find them back in the hospital or worse than that. Anything else? Okay, so if anybody has any other questions, if not.
I do. I realize, sorry, that I didn't tell the best part of my story. It just struck me, and it's a perfect lead in to the next committee report. Recently, one of our partners, Jody, with Heading Home, reached out to me and asked me if I remembered the woman that I'd been in the exam room with. And I said, absolutely. Well, she is now housed and doing very well. And so I left off the best part of that story. But so from not keeping good health, not having a bad outcome with that health condition, now to being housed is the ultimate goal that we're all aiming for.
Okay, so with that, moving right along, we'll move to the next committee report, which is the Coordinated Street Outreach Committee, co-chairs by, well, before I go on, Rodney, you just got on and I wanted to make sure, did you have anything to add on that conversation?
No, Mr. Chair, I apologize. I had to step out, but I believe the meeting went very well. I think it was well attended. I think we had good representation. So I think we were all very pleased with the response and the participation.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, Rodney, warming up a donut wrapped in aluminum in the microwave is not a good idea.
Yeah, I think it was overbaked popcorn, but I think it made the microwave blow up, and then they had a bunch of smoke, and it set off all the alarms. And so,
all right, well, I'm glad you're all
another
safe.
day at the office.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, thank you so much. All right, go ahead, Sochi and Commissioner Collie and Denise Lynn. Go ahead.
Commissioner Collie in.
We're going to let Commissioner Collie and give us 1 second, members of the council.
And Denise.
And Denise.
Does not look like Denise is on.
No,
Okay.
Denise is not on today. She had work.
JC right there. Did you let him?
I let him on.
Commissioner Collie, can you hear us?
I just had an error on my end.
Okay. Well, why don't we start with Sochi, and then as he gets on, we'll let him chime in.
Well, and I once filled up a whole office with smoke from an overcooked tortilla. So I've been the person who set the office on fire before. So a quick recap of our meeting on Thursday. We had a great participation and attendance. One thing about street outreach is that, it overlaps into so much of our work, it overlaps into the other committees as well. And in our previous meetings, there had been a lot of interest and concern and questions about youth outreach, as well as for those who are experiencing high acuity and comorbidities when it comes to mental health and behavioral health issues, as well as substance use disorders. So with that in mind, for this meeting, we definitely wanted to create a little bit of overlap. And Quinn Dene was one of our guest speakers to talk a little bit about the youth continuum. So I won't talk too much about that because I know that that's still on the agenda. But it is something that affects our work and some of the concerns of our members. So part of that was conversations about outreach to youth, knowing that they are a subgroup a very vulnerable subgroup within this population, and what are some of the ways that we can best reach out to them? What are some ways that we can change our practices or enhance our practices? In that sense, we did discuss those needs and gaps. One of those needs and gaps was also knowing what everyone does, how they do it, and when. And then another need and gap that is always emerging, is always something that's coming up, is what happens in that time period between 5 p.m. and 8 a.m. and on the weekends when service providers are not working or are closed. And while we do have some resources in the community, there's very seldom a place to refer individuals who are in need or who are wanting help. One thing that we were able to do last week that kind of is something that is an ongoing project that is it's something that I've been working on, is a project to try to connect APD officers who are working in the swing and graveyard shift to be able to refer people to assistance as needed. And it's a project that I've been working on with Commander Josh Brown from the Valley Area Command since he became commander in January. This came out of a conversation with him where what is the biggest need for your officers and what is the biggest need in your area command? And the answer to a lot of that is, how do we connect people who are experiencing homelessness to the help that they need? And so we've been working on this for some time, and so it is just kind of coincidence that the HCC was started, and I'm in the position that I'm in as co-chair of the subcommittee on coordinated street outreach. But this could potentially be a high-level strategy as far as how do we, one, extend coordination throughout the city by implementing this project to officers in all of the area commands. And then also, how do we make sure that we're creating that connection to people who need help the most and to people that are able to give it. And the way that we've designed this project is that the officers only generate the data. They come across someone in their work, they log it. We're using city resources that already exist. And this is something that we've been working on building out for some time. So it's actually really just perfect timing. Part of that project, and also just wanting to get to know my co-chairs and kind of show the work that we've been doing to kind of get their perspectives and ideas, is we did take Commissioner Collie, Commissioner-elect Barboa, Director Pierce, and Yvette Ammerman, Ramitas Ammerman, on a ride-along at 8 p.m. to about 11 p.m. last Thursday. We had Carol Brusca from Heading Home, who was there to talk about the relationships that she has with the officers and sort of how it can be so beneficial to both groups to serve the most vulnerable people in our community, and how working with them makes access to her and to care so much easier. So I do hope that can be one of our high-level strategies. We are already in conversations with Heading Home and Albuquerque Healthcare for the Homeless to start this and implement this and start gathering the data that we need. But along with that identification piece of people in need and that connection to services and off hours, as well as also giving officers a tool to support people who are so vulnerable in these positions. We're also seeing a need for a coordinator, for coordination amongst the different services, the service providers, and the different entities. So those are the two high-level strategies that appear to be emerging from our group. And I will turn it over to my co-chair. We did mention that Dr. Denise Lynn is unable to join us. She had work commitments in the hospital today. But I will turn it over to Commissioner Collie.
Thank you, Sochi. Hello, Lawrence and the
Hello,
council.
sir.
I want to add one more gap that we have not articulated even to ourselves yet, and that comes out of our evening ride with the APD officers under Commander Brown. And that is the criminalization of homelessness throughout the community and in our police forces. You know, he was quick to point out that the only way they have of coding a phone call of complaint from a citizen about folks on the street is criminal complaint. This is vagrancy, this is panhandling, this is something. And so, you know, when we begin with the criminalization of someone sleeping on the street, we're in a whole different ballpark. And so I guess I want to identify to this whole group that clearly the way in which we talk about homelessness, the way in which we think about it, the way in which we respond to it needs to be moved out of the criminalization and into a whole different kind of category. I want to underline that the software piece, the application piece that Commander Brown and Sochi have been working on is extremely useful, both as a prod to the police to understand homelessness is not a crime, but also just the fact that you can distribute that widely. Not only police can do it, deputies can do it. We could even talk about these private security agencies that are constantly called out to clear somebody out of a door stoop at the middle of the night. At this point, this piece of software, this application that would work on any phone, has the ability to give an officer the chance to report someone sleeping someplace without having to go wake them up at 3 in the morning and tell them to move their bad behavior someplace else. So it changes the whole contact medium and does really an extraordinary job. So, you know, thanks to Commander Brown and Sochi for seeing that need and developing it and moving on it. And I want to underline how important that is in the whole frame of it, but also as a part of our effort to say homelessness is not a crime. And we've got to say that over and over and over. Thank you all very much.
That's great. Thanks for that wise, I think, perspective. That is so interesting that there are many folks in our community really are afraid of them because of this criminalization that would stigma that we put on it. Carol,
yes, if I may add, and thank you, Sochi, for creating that opportunity. And Commissioner Collie, I enjoyed riding around in a police car with you the other night. That was a new experience. Thank you. I did want to say that one of the other things I observed that is the gap is that for people that are choosing to sleep on the street, if they did want to be inside where it was warmer, we're not going to drive them 20 miles outside of town. So, and there wasn't a place to take them. I mean, there's why people go to an ER because they could get a cup of coffee and be out of the cold, but that's not necessarily a good use of resource. So I just do want to say it's highlighting the gap for emergency beds that are close by if people would choose to get out of the cold. I think we all observed that in terms of encampments, there were fewer that night and it was a little colder on Thursday night. And so some of those folks may have been out at the west side. But if any of those folks chose at 2 or 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. to get out of the cold, we didn't really have a place for them to go. So it just highlights that gap and that need for emergency beds.
Right. Any questions on this for this committee? Councilor Benton.
Yes, thank you. This is really great that you're working with Josh Brown, and I want to. I don't know, Lawrence, can you make him stay in the valley?
Yes.
We'll try, my friend.
You know, this is a whole separate issue, right? We get wonderful people who are are willing to take on the tough work of working downtown and in the valley. And I'm not going to say it's not tough everywhere, but we've really got it all in the valley. And so that is really great news. I went on a bike along with the Wells Park Bike Patrol in January, starting at dawn. And I froze my, what off, but I saw a lot, and we saw a lot, and I saw things of what these officers were trying to handle, which was basically just rousting people off of sidewalks and things like that, because the sun was coming up and the first buses were coming in from the shelter. And, everything was just dysfunctional, and through no fault of the officers, they've got to be trained not just in crisis intervention, but in this whole dynamic. And, but that led me to think at that time, and it's related to this, that if we can't, if in the short term, we don't have teams that are available out all night long, that the first priority might be that time of day, early in the morning, but because people have been camping. And sometimes it is on a private property, and now soon the employees of that private property will be arriving. And now you do have a potential conflict going on between private property users and homeless folks camped on the property. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that, all of what we're doing is about prioritization, because the whole thing is an emergency. So where do we start? And on this, I'm really thrilled about this. I'm a longtime supporter of the Albuquerque Street Connect, which is a branch of Heading Home, and they do great work. And Jody was mentioned. She's a person who's like a lifetime person that's been in the field on this stuff. And so, yeah, I this is also just a critical, as a counselor and my constituents, this is the most critical need, right? Because this is where the public interacts. And they're calling me and they're asking me, who do I call? And I don't always I normally don't have the answer to that. I don't want to say 242 cops. I don't want to say 911. So what do I say when these encampments come up? We have been, working through the command and directing people to Sebastian, forgetting his last name, who is sort of the APD coordinator on homeless issues. Is that right? I guess.
No, Councilor Benton, Sebastian Adamczyk and Selena Lopez are both public outreach people out of Family and Community Services.
Oh, okay.
So they are definitely working with the whole array of our service providers, as well as
Right.
APD when needed, so yes.
Yeah, they're in close contact with APD. I guess that's why I assume maybe they were part of the department.
Very, very closely, with AP.
Yeah. But, just the latest, right, is fewer people in Coronado Park, more people over on Rio Grande Boulevard.
That's right.
Area. So I'm hearing from hotel owners, Old Town businesses, and the Sawmill neighborhood. And, I'm not asking for anybody to give me direction on this right now, but this is just typical, it could be anywhere in District 2 that I could be receiving these kind of reports.
Councilor Benton, could I just add, and I'll have my team members add in if I have any of this, and add more detail. So we have this Coronado Park meeting every Monday morning at 9 a.m. for an hour with APD, with Parks and Rec, with Solid Waste. It's a big team effort. And I think this has really proven dividends. And yesterday we did talk about, it's great that Coronado Park is looking better. but there is the ripple effect. So if they're not in Coronado Park, but one of the couple benefits that we talked about is that it's taking fewer APD officers. If you've got a lot of people in Coronado Park and folks are going in there and then APD is there, because of the numbers, you've got to have more officers as needed, but not as people are spreading out in the neighborhood. That is not a good thing. But we've gotten about 5 or 6 people housed. And just keeping that connection going. But I'll ask Lisa or anybody else if they have anything to add to that. But we were just asking about really trying to understand that as we clean up Coronado Park, what those effects are. And there are some positive ones.
Thank you.
All right. Let me ask you this, because it dawns on me as we're talking here that, and it may be something we should have done earlier on, and that is, to respect the university, for example, Madam President, you know, we're talking about all these programs that the city and county have, and we really haven't done a very good job of explaining them to you all, so that when you hear these conversations about, for example, that we have a street outreach program, etc. You know, I don't even know if we've connected with UNM law enforcement to be part of this. And maybe they would have some opportunities to give us some insight, or at least express what issues they're encountering around the university areas. Or more importantly, I would even echo that to our commissioners and to Julie about whether or not we should be also trying to work with the sheriff's office to look and see how we can connect this outreach programs, so that I am sure our sheriff's officers are encountering the same issues that our APD folks are. And so I just put that out there for you. Any thoughts about from you all on that?
Well, Lawrence, thank you. I just made a note to myself that I needed to find an avenue to get information about all of these services, because it's true, you know, I don't know where they all are. And hearing the discussion about the disbursement of people, you know, certainly we are seeing tremendous effects along Central and on our campus. And so I do think connecting with our police, our UNM police would be really critical, and I'm trying to figure out on our campus, even changing our force to deal with our homeless populations that come on our campus all the time, you know, a different model to help, because, you know, what we're doing isn't working. And you know, I really want to see us serve this population effectively, and I want to see them get services. And I don't think our police know how to really do that. They're just moving people off. And I will tell you, in the last few months, things seem to really be deteriorating right next to campus. So this is really critical.
Thank you, President Stokes.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to mention that, yeah, the county is doing a lot of things, and I think that we just continue to bump up against the obstacle of communications about, you know, the programs we have available and how to reach out to our programs. As Commissioner Collie brought up, that, you know, right now the model we have is criminalization of homelessness and mental illness. And so, you know, we're really trying to work against that, and we have good stuff going on. It's just, I know there's such frustration. I know, you know, in my district, people reach out to me and they're like, how do we get a mobile crisis team to come out? How do we get a community engagement team to come out? What do we do? Because people don't want to use law enforcement for things like that. People in the community really want to see people get the right help. And so I think that is definitely a major frustration all around for all of us, because there are other types of help available. It's just trying to get people connected. So yeah, I think we all kind of continue to struggle with that.
That's a great point, Commissioner. I know that Councilor Benton was shaking his head. And I'm thinking to myself, look, this is this coordinating council's opportunity to see how we can, coordinate those programs a little better. As you heard from Carol, Sebastian and his crew, along with Sochi, although Sochi will talk a lot about the interaction with APD, but a lot of that is non-police work. It's really going out there with these teams that are comprised of folks who understand the services, probably need to beat them up, and having more folks that have a little bit more knowledge of mental health issues and how to deal with mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and all the other things that maybe we know that our homeless population is involved with. And so as a result, keeping them out of the law enforcement portion, I think, as Commissioner Collie says, I think helps us begin to hopefully change the conversation that these aren't criminals. These are just human beings who have some challenging issues, and we should deal with them on an issue by issue basis, not on a perception basis. And that's why I think that, so to your point, Commissioner Pyskoty and everyone in the council, this is the kind of stuff that we got to be talking about, because there are so many services that both the city and the county are providing. And there are some gaps that the university really could use our help with if we could just make sure that we're all sort of in sync. So that's what this committees are supposed to be hopefully evolving into. And look, we're expecting a lot of them in the next 60 days. But I think once we get past that, the continuing conversation, I think, will help us begin to streamline those. But Julie, y'all didn't say too much about the sheriff's office. Is that something we should work with, or do you think that that's a different conversation to have?
So, hey, Lawrence and everybody. Yes, absolutely. It should be a conversation that we should be having with the sheriff, but because, he's an elected official, I can't, as you know, I can't give him direction, but I think that there's a lot of really good people that work in the sheriff's department, and I think that they would be willing to have that conversation. So yes, the answer is yes, absolutely, and I'm happy to begin the dialogue with him.
Okay, that'd be great. Just want to make sure we're it's always interesting how we just got to figure out. I think the UNM one piece is really super important, President Stokes, and so I'll ask Sochi and some folks to reach out. You just let us know who we can call. Commissioner Collie?
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just wondering if we ought to branch off from Sochi's committee and try to do something with all of the public safety people in the county, which would include the deputy, which would include University of New Mexico. It would include Albuquerque Public Schools. I can't imagine what happens to their buildings at night. And maybe even the private security forces. We've got a whole lot of people out there on the road between Sochi's magic hour of 5 p.m. and 8 a.m. And I think some coordination there and some reorientation of what their job is and what their responsibilities are, and the information we have about services that we can provide, it is just a critical interchange that needs to happen. And I know that's not within the scope of our work, but boy, is it important.
Well, I would say, Commissioner and members of the council, that as we move through these processes and discover the gaps, that certainly we should, include those, have those conversations and include some of those folks as we move forward. So I think that's a really good point, which was going to lead me to my final question. Xochitl and commissioners, what do you all think about the next steps as it relates to where we are? What are you all thinking moving forward in terms of a plan, given the narrow focus that we have so far?
And in regards to social dispatch?
No,
To get the gaps and
the gap
high impact
analysis and the high impact strategies. Are you all going to be putting forward a document for
Oh, yes. I believe we are, as they come up, we're making lists and noting the gaps and the needs and the high level strategies. And so we will be working on a document to provide to the HCC Council.
Okay, all right. Any other questions on this issue? If not, then we'll just move on to the youth
Councilor Benton does so.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Benton. I keep looking for a little blue hand. Okay, all right, go ahead, Quinn, on the youth housing.
Great. Just wait for, to see my co-chairs, Jennifer Scacco, Nasha Torres, and Masada.
Just you, it's just you.
Just me, oh my goodness. Well, hello, everyone, again. The youth committee is off to a bang of a start. So we had our first meeting last week. Our second meeting is tomorrow. What really came out of it? Well, first of all, the group of folks that we have on the youth committee, you know, they're youth service providers, they're CYFD, they're county, their city, etc. The great news is these people have had these conversations, and we're very aware of what is going on, like what are the needs for young people. So it felt really good to be able to have the conversation, like for real, everyone at the table, we're gonna move forward. So the first high impact strategy that really came out of the first meeting was this need for a youth housing needs assessment. And Asada, so great and such a can-do attitude. She's meeting with 4 researchers at UNM already to find out if they can do this for us. So that's very, very exciting because this is something we do not have as a community and will give us a baseline idea of what's really going on out there. I mean, we have the data on foster youth, on juvenile justice youth. We have those numbers. We have the people that are accessing behavioral health services. But what we are missing is what is the number of folks that are truly street youth, that are out there in the elements trying to get by. So for our next meeting, our plan is to really get our shared language together, like who are the young people? You know, they're UNM students, but they're also single parents. They're also living on the streets. Some of them are trafficked youth. Some of them are addicted to substances. Some of them have complex mental health needs. So we really want to get all of that together to figure out who are we talking about, who is missing, and then from there we want to figure out what is the definition of homelessness we are operating under. Because for all of you here, there are many. There's McKinney-Vento with the Title I. They have a definition. There's HUD, and there's also the Family Youth Services Bureau for the federal government. All 3 have different definitions. But I think what we're trying to do is narrow those definitions down and really figure out how are our young people here in New Mexico and in Albuquerque specifically identifying. Because some of them are not using the same language that, say, the adult population would. So we want to really figure that out to meet them where they are at, to really get a true report on what is happening. So that's very exciting. And then the next part is we'll be having a conversation around behavioral health needs and how they intersect with housing needs. Because, you know, when you're in the biz of youth providing, you hear a lot that a young person will need a higher level of care, But what we're trying to get at is what does that mean and how can we support this higher level of care within a housing continuum model? What is that true need? What does a supportive housing situation for a young person with complex trauma look like? What does it look like for somebody who's living in their car, but like taking a full load of classes at UNM? What does that look like? So the levels of support are gonna look different, but I think we are on to a great start and I'm very excited.
Very good, very good. Any other questions for the youth folks? Committee? Commissioner, Councilor Benton.
Yes, thanks for this. This is really an important committee in my mind because, I mean, these are the folks who are at a risk of future long time homelessness and demands, you know, on society in general. And, you know, I think one aspect is that my sense is, at least for many of the younger people who are on the street, I'm not talking about UNM students necessarily, but people who are on the streets, not necessarily even owning a car. but who are likely to have escaped really adverse family situations and have run away. And they hit the road, and that's where they've been ever since. And that's heartbreaking, but it's also maybe an opportunity that they, you know, depending on how long ago they hit the road, that they could, you know, kind of be helped back in to society in some way. And so this is like, you know, just as with all the population, they're all dispersed, as Quinn was saying. But I think the my sense is also that it's in terms of interaction with the general public, that particular subpopulation of the youth are pretty aggressive and potentially violent, and, you know, maybe on some pretty bad drugs that make them that way. So that's, I mean, that's just an observation of seeing how that dynamic has changed over recent years during my time on the council, that's a real, it's a new kind of subpopulation on the street, and it's a pretty tough group. So just an observation.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that feedback, Councilor Benton, because see, the thing here is those young people, all the unseen young people, the more visible young people, they all need us. And what I mean by that is, you know, you talk about enhancing protective factors a lot, and that comes in a lot of different ways in a person's life, but really, like if you're talking about positive adults, it just takes one. So if we can reach these young people in a positive way, because that also leads me to this other part where Nasha, you know, she really wanted to be brought up to speed of like, tell me about the language and youth provision, tell me about all these things. But actually, the thing that I wanted to stress, and I really want all of you to hear it too, is it's, you know, you can learn definitions and language. Like that is just information. But what all of this comes down to is if you have the belief that young people are inherently good, that they have had some crappy things happen to them in their life, but they deserve stable housing just like everybody else. And they deserve a fair chance to be able to untie and unpack their trauma in a speed at which feels healthy for them, not that we can force them. And so it really is about how we are seeing young people and how we are moving them forward in their life without assumptive practices, without telling, like projecting what we feel is the truth, but really letting them come to us and creating that container that they can be safe and housed and then grow from there. So I'm real excited.
I think that's really clear, and I appreciate it. But no, that's great. Yeah, that's a great segue to
Quinn for City Council. Just kidding.
We're gonna have the at-large youth counselor. Anyway, thanks, Quinn. That was great. Really good. Look, I know that we're running a little bit over our 1 hour, so I'm going to be brief with our last report. So we did get a chance to have a number of, well, these Councilor Benton, Councilor Davis, and I, and several of the folks in this room, and I believe even Commissioner O'Malley sent one of her representatives to do a tour of the Loveless facility. And Madam President, Tom Neal joined us from UNM, as well as and Julie, Mr. Beatty. Robert Beatty joined us from you know, representing the collaborative, and we did a nice tour of the Loveless facility last Friday evening. I'll let both some of the councilors describe their perspectives of the tour, but we have looked at the facility. We are finishing up the appraisal of the facility, and we're also doing an environmental assessment, which is taking a little longer as it relates to that before we have a conversation about next steps with regard to that building. But anyway, nonetheless, it was a great opportunity to see it. any of you that want to see it, didn't get a chance to go last week, please get in touch with us, and we'll be happy to do another site tour. One of the interesting things I think that both counselors and some of the folks that did the tour along with me last Friday is that it is a massive building. It is, it is significant, which as anything else creates great opportunity, but also it is also can be, one of those that we have to really manage carefully as we decide to use that facility going forward. We are trying to set up a meeting with the governor's office and Department of Health to have them look at the facility as well, because they have some services already there from the state pays for. So we'll see how that plays itself out. And then, but one of the other things I want to make sure that I also report to is we had our committee meeting as well. And one of our tasks will be to present to you all over the next, at our next meeting, is a framework of the facilities, if you will, for lack of a better way, the menu that we think is out there as it relates to facilities, those both that we have today, and then opportunities to look at facilities that we believe need to be established, if you will, to really provide a lot of what all our committees are talking about, which is some place for rest of care, some place to have officers refer people to, places for folks to get other services, etc. So all of that to say is we've talked about the West Side facility as being part of that mix for some period of time, if not long term. We've talked about potentially a facility in the north downtown area that is going to be necessary because the fact is that we have all these providers in that area, and that's where we see the challenges, as Councilor Benton described, and so did Carol, with Coronado Park and the neighborhoods. We also have talked about Loveless being part of that mix in some fashion, and getting an assessment of that. We also have talked about needing to have a women and children's facility, if you will, maybe / youth facility. So we want to just begin to lay that out so that, you know, the clock is ticking for our council to get something put together by the end of, I think it's October, is that right, Carol?
Yes, we will review this at October 13th at Homeless Coordinating Council. So yes,
So we're getting close to a time where we can begin to start making some decisions. I will be straightforward with all of you. I mean, the mayor is and the city, we're getting antsy to begin having the real conversations about the next steps. And so our goal is to, from all the committees, is hopefully to begin to put in some high-level strategies, some processes, etc., and maybe you can even come to some recommendations on some of these things so that we can move forward at our next HCC meeting. So it may be that our next HCC meeting we have to extend the time a bit because there'll be a lot to have a conversation about, but I just wanted to make sure you all were aware that from a facility standpoint, we're getting to a point where we think we can have some at least what I would call a straw man kind of, or straw person, as I would say, kind of structure so you all can get a look at it and see how that, and look, I think the meetings today with all these committees have really shown some gaps, right? I mean, whether it's law enforcement with UNM or the county, or whether it's the youth piece and how we deal with that issue, or even the respite and the social services piece. So all I'm just saying is that we want to make sure we get that now codified in some kind of a report so that we can begin to make some decisions and make some recommendations moving forward. So with that being said, are there any other thoughts, questions? Councilor Benton and Councilor Davis, you both went on the trip. Any thoughts on your own part? Councilor Benton?
Yeah, just quickly. So Loveless, as Lawrence said, is huge, but it is kind of laid out in these 3 or 4 wings, right? Major wings, and kind of the oldest one is just in my sense the sort of least attractive for another provider, and probably has the more opportunity in a sense. That's the wing that the feds put the money into for the COVID beds for now. But so that was one thing. But just in the conclusion on the street street outreach committee, the summary, of what they felt like they needed to do is the same. I think it needs to happen for each committee to start developing these outlines of what we're going to report back. And that's gaps, needs, and strategy, and if each committee kind of organized it that way, I think it would be appropriate. I think it was really the right call to give ourselves a deadline and to respond to Lawrence's statement that the mayor's getting antsy. So everybody is, but also it was good. It was good that we gave ourselves a deadline, and I think the community is anticipating that report, which is what it is. It's not a full-blown plan, but it's going to lay out, it's intended to show the framework of the lay of the land of where we're heading. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Any other thoughts? I have one little piece of business that I want to just bring to the council's attention. Mayor and I had a long conversation over the weekend, and he was very concerned that he's not able to make these because of this APS schedule and the need to be with his children at the time that he thought was open 2 months ago or whenever we put this together. So he's asked me to ask you all for your indulgence on something. He was wondering if you all might be interested in moving the time from a 9 o'clock meeting to about a 9:45 meeting, which would give us some time for public comment, and then he would join so that he can be at the meetings. Because let me just say bluntly, all the elected officials are spending time doing this. I know you don't want to hear from a designee like myself. You'd rather hear from the man himself in this case, and the mayor and President Stokes. Totally appreciate your participation as well. And so the mayor just really wants to know if this would be a huge inconvenience as it relates to your schedules, if we might move this back a bit so that he can join the meetings and be part of the conversations moving forward. So I want to get your thoughts on that, and I'll open it up for that.
Yeah, I'm fine with the time change, and I really hate to add the second part. I think with all the great work that's going on, maybe we need to schedule it for an hour and a half.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Pyskoty. I appreciate that.
I agree with both of those statements.
I'll check with Dr. Richards, but our policy across the board has been to be flexible for everyone's kids' educational needs. And so I'm sure that would apply to the mayor, just like it applies to all the.
That's what he said. I like that. Councilors, are you okay with that? Okay.
Yeah, I think we only have 2 more meetings, maybe 3, so I think we can make that work.
All right. Now, keep in mind that I think it will be important for you all to think about this, and I would suggest this. Just because we have a deadline doesn't mean this council needs to go away. So, I think that I'd like to see us have the conversation down the road about staying with this program, maybe not meeting as often or as regularly as we are, but look, there are so many gaps and so many needs that our reports are going to show that I actually think that this is really, really good for Bernalillo County. It's really good for the city. It's good for the university to be able to have these conversations going forward. So just a plug for maybe a longer conversation about this. So with that being said, any other things that are just nipping at you that you need to say something about?
Did Julie say if that time worked for her?
Julie, that works for you, right? The time change?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate it. I wasn't sure it gets. All right, with that being said, thank you all. Please stay safe, and we'll see you soon.